We are very, very thrilled to have a very, very special guest here with us, Afshin Molavi. I will let my colleague Jason Wong do the introduction of Afshin.
Mr. Molavi is based in Washington, D.C. He's the co-director of Emerge 85 and a regular contributor to its online content. Afshin is also a senior fellow at the Johns Hopkins Foreign Policy Institute. So with that, please join me again in welcoming Mr. Afshin Molavi.
Thank you. These are the big trends that I see, and most importantly, I think these trends are disruption-proof trends. The 85%, what do I mean by that? Probably no surprise to you, but a surprise to many Americans. 85% of the world lives outside of Northern America and Europe. 85% of the world. We here in the United States are a demographic minority by far, right? So there, often there's this term, the West and the rest, right? Well, the rest is 85% of the world's population, right? So, maybe it's the West and the most, I don't know, but it's, we're living in a world that is demographically heavily imbalanced between the quote-unquote West and the rest, and heavily imbalanced toward Asia. 129 million children born every year. And where are they being born? Africa, Asia, Latin America, right? Predominantly Asia, right? So 129 million children born. This 1.5 million per week, this is, the number that I was getting at earlier. This is the number of new urban dwellers every week. Right? We are living in a dramatically urbanized world where 54% of the world's population is urban now. China passed the 50% urbanization mark. As many of you know, in 2012, China will never look back. China will never be a predominantly rural country again. By the year, over the next 15 to 20 years, we're headed for 2 out of 3 people in the world living in cities. Right? So 1.5 million is the number, if you count the number of new urban dwellers from rural to urban migration, and if you count the number of babies being born, we're looking at about 1.5 million per week of new urban dwellers. Right? So cities are the real economic engines, and it's not just in the emerging world. It's here in the United States as well. So you take a city like Los Angeles, if you were to take the Los Angeles metropolitan area, you're looking at about an $860 billion economy. The Los Angeles metropolitan area, would be a G20 country. Just the Los Angeles metropolitan area. It has a GDP that is roughly equal to Turkey's, right? It has a GDP that is larger than the GDP of the Netherlands, a GDP that is larger than the GDP of oil-rich Saudi Arabia. So just the Los Angeles, metropolitan area, Los Angeles, Long Beach, and Anaheim. So this gives you a sense of the power of cities as economic engines, but the power of cities as economic engines not just in the emerging world, right, but also here in the United States. By the year 2030, we're looking at 5 billion entering the global middle class. Obviously, some of the biggest leaps have taken place in China. Right? We've seen transformational leaps in China. But 5 billion by the year 2030, this goes back to if we combine all of these together, we're talking about urbanization, young populations, technological connectivity. Again, there's a reason why Adidas and Unilever and Nestle and Procter & Gamble and all of these companies are chasing this emerging middle class, because these are big numbers. And these are young people with buying power. This global middle class is reshaping trade patterns. It's reshaping countries. It's reshaping the way firms do business. I think it's reshaping every industry. It's reshaping your industry as well, the education industry. Because one of the things we've learned as middle classes grow is they want education. They demand better education. They seek private education as well when they can. And we're seeing it all across the emerging world. And finally, the fifth key trend is under 30. We're living in a very young world. More than 50% of the world's population is under 30, but particularly in the emerging world that we described, and particularly in Africa, particularly in some Asian countries. China's not one of the countries that is considered young around the world, but certainly sub-Saharan Africa, certainly many Middle East countries, where you have populations in which 50% are under the age of 21. 50% under the age of 18. So we have a very young population, young populations that are growing and dynamic and becoming consumers. And $56 trillion of consumer spending by the year 2030. According to Euromonitor, a lot of that is middle-class spending. But I think it's just a very interesting and dynamic time that we're living in. It's a transformative time we're living in. I can certainly go on and on in this vein, but I do want to have a conversation, so why don't I leave it here. And I really thank you for your time and attention. Thank you.